Welcome to Full Incarnations. This podcast is part of the journey towards the Erotas 2026 Symposium in Portugal. Here, we open conversations on birth, consciousness, and healing, exploring how the very first moments of life shape who we become and how reclaiming those beginnings can transform our future. We are so glad you're here. Let's begin. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Full Incarnations. I'm Rita, and I have here with me today Victoria Rose. Victoria is a pre- and perinatal psychology and health educator, a sacred birth keeper, and the founder of Luminous Birth. Victoria, it's such a pleasure to have you here with us today. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us.
It's truly a pleasure. Thanks, Rita, for having me.
Victoria, in your work, you explored this idea that welcoming the new human begins way before the baby is born into this world and begins during preconception. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Wow, amazing question. I'm really honored to be part of this conversation. I truly can't think of another conversation that would be more important for us to be having at this time. It is true that every single one of us began developing before we were conceived. And we have decades and decades of pre and perinatal psychology research that shows us that consciousness informs development. Consciousness precedes development. And in this way, all of the energy that is present before conception directly informs our psycho, neuro, immuno-endocrine development. And that's a lot to unpack. But in simple terms, we can even, instead of using the word energy, say all of the thoughts, the feelings, the beliefs of especially the woman who's going to house the baby, everything then that's going on in her life, in her environment, is part of that energy. And then everything that's going on also in the world is part of that energy, of that information that will then inform the development of the baby. So in scientific language, we call this epigenetics. The environment informs the gene expression. And this is a really, really, really important thing for us to consider, not to apply more stress or burden to those of us that are choosing the pathway of parenthood, but rather that we can actually harness the power of the opportunity that we have as architects of the next generations, to recognize that all of the building blocks that are going to build this human being are in fact our thoughts, our beliefs, our worldview. All of that is in fact the building materials. So what built this gorgeous space that we're sitting in looks like pine and these, all of this. Well, in the construction of a human being, those building materials are the consciousness of the creators, that in this context would be the parents. And the birthing process, I always say with my preconception couples, birth is already happening. So the preconception informs the conception informs the pregnancy then informs the birth informs the most informational and transformational time of every woman and family's lifetime, which is the postpartum time. And all of it informs the rest of her and the family's lifetime. So it's a continuum. When a woman births, everything that she experienced from the time of preconception is inevitably going to come up. That baby story is going to emerge. And that's what she's going to be moving through during the birth. So there's so much more there. There's more practical things that we could look at in terms of what keeps pregnancy safe, what keeps birth safe. I always say birth is inherently safe. Our job is to protect the inherent safety of birth. And it's paradoxical because there's no safety, in life. But for sure, we know that sitting in a classroom or doing classes or stimulating the cerebral intellect in pregnancy doesn't keep birth safe. It's not something that contributes to birth outcomes. And therefore, I say that all birth education ideally happens before pregnancy. I think a lot of women in our modern world only begin to learn about their bodies and their cycles when they start to think about pregnancy. And if pregnancy just happens easily, she may not even. But if she struggles, then there becomes a need. Pregnancy isn't the time to be learning about how birth works. We should have learned how birth works when we were toddlers. Because ideally, if birth wasn't removed from the homes, we would have been seeing birth happen as a natural event that happens in households. And we wouldn't even question our innate ability to give birth. Because it's been removed, and there's such a deep forgetting, women are spending most of their pregnancies, and usually the lateral half of the pregnancy, or the last 3 months of the pregnancy, going, oh, wait, I'm now going to birth a baby, so now I need to start. Yeah, and in this way, it's actually disconnecting women from where we need to be, which is inside of our bodies, inside of our hearts, to birth.
That's absolutely beautiful what you just said. And I think a lot of people are not aware of their inner baby, and that these stories are coming up when they become mothers, because we have this belief that we don't have memories from that period, that we were too young to remember, right? And then we struggle with our babies and we don't know why, because we're not in touch with our inner babies, right? And that's another theme that is very important that we are bringing with this symposium, is not only the consciousness of around preconception, but also to take responsibility to take care of your inner baby. And from everything that you just said, it looks like this birth time, the preconception, the gestation, and then the birth itself, it's like a rite of passage or a psycho-spiritual initiation, not only for the baby, but almost for like the entire family. Would you like to tell us a little bit more on your view on that?
Yeah, of course. And I really like to be careful with this term education, birth education. I often don't like to use my title because, in fact, it's education that colonized birth to begin with. Women were taught that they needed to be taught how to give birth. And that's why we're in this predicament that we're in. And all of the magic and the mystery has been extracted from the birthing process, from the conception process. I mean, what could possibly be more magical than conception? We don't know how we have no idea how it actually happens. We have 500 years of embryology, thousands of years of Tibetan wisdom, who I believe are the original embryologists. They were the real masters of understanding how does consciousness enter form and how does it leave form. We still don't know. This big boom happens, big flash of light happens, and then, we spiral into being. Luminous birth has its name because creation is luminous. Conception, pregnancy, and birth is luminous. It illuminates everything. And in this way, when we welcome consciousness into our bodies, everything, our body is this living archive, this living library of memory, of experience. And when we welcome life, all of that gets illuminated. And it needs to transform us. It has to transform us. If you drop a baby off on someone's doorstep who hasn't gone through this natural evolutionary process of conception and pregnancy and birth, well, women are innately maternal and caring and nurturing, but it will be difficult for that person to just become the mother of that being. There will be things she'll need to learn. The evolutionary process, the natural unfoldment of conception, pregnancy, and birth is what actually teaches us how to mother. And it has to transform us. You know, there's so many parts of us that must die in order for us to welcome in this new human. And we're living in an unprecedented moment of planetary history. Like, I really believe that this is about illuminating, you know, the destruction that has written our own history that is beyond us in this lifetime. It's the last hundreds or thousands of years. In order that we can integrate the real true essence of who we are, and from there we can welcome the emergence of a new story. But these humans that are, these souls that are incarnating now, just like us, they're coming on purpose, but they're coming at a moment of where an ending is kind of bleeding into a new beginning. And we don't know what the future is. We never did. We still don't. And therefore, we need to become malleable. We need to become changeable. And, well, let's come back to, we need to open ourselves with a willingness to be changed. Now, in other cultures, just to bring it back to, this is a rite of passage. In other cultures, that's an inherent, unforgotten knowing. You know, in indigenous cultures, you don't see them hiring a doula or a midwife. These are chosen members of the community, and not only mothers, but parents would be supported by the elders or by the matriarch, or these members of the community would have an unforgotten awareness that these two humans are going to transform. Every single time. If they're having their first baby, they're going to move from being an ordinary human into a hero, into a parent. And if they're having a two baby, the second, third, then they're becoming parents of two, parents of four. And in each one of these thresholds, there's a maturational milestone. They're changing biochemically, hormonally, you know?
Yeah.
No matter what, birth is a rite, pregnancy, birth is a rite of passage. And what that means is that all of the energy that's present or not is informing the beliefs, the worldviews that especially mother, but for sure parents and family unit will carry with them from that moment forward. So when we surround parents in the love and the deep presence that they need and the reverence that they deserve during that time, then typically they blossom in the right direction. And when we withdraw all of that deep presence and reverence, and we replace it with doctor's appointments and blood analysis and urine analysis and ultrasounds and all these very mechanical things that are very stressful and fear-based. And I'm not ever saying that there's not a place for these things. I'm saying there's something much deeper that parents and families, babies need in this time. Then the imprints for the parents are I need something or someone outside of myself who knows what's best for me. And mothers get born into motherhood thinking they're inadequate or they don't know what's best for their child. And I believe that in this time and since the beginning of our humanity, the one thing that can stand any chance to protect our children is a mother's intact instinct. It's her connection to her intuition, to her inner voice. And we can't have mothers who are questioning themselves. I mean, we'll do it and we'll turn to each other as women and go, throughout the lifespan of parenting for sure. But a rite of passage really means that this is a transformational life experience. And everything that you take in during this very porous time of your life is going to inform the beliefs that you then carry with you, predominantly about yourself. And believe it or not, like it or not, agree with it or not, it's a rite of passage. And so, we need to honor that.
Yeah, I think a lot of men and women are going to relate to this that you were saying, because a lot of the personal development processes start when you become a parent. I hear so many people saying, "Oh, my life changed after I became a mother, and I started doing therapy, and I started this whole psychological process and developing process." So I think a lot of people are going to relate to this conversation that we are having here. Another thing that you said, and I think that's what you mean, because you talk a lot about sovereignty in your work. And I think what you mean is not only about making conscious choices, but also about this inner knowing, this inner authority that you have inside yourself. I think it is what you mean by this, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm really glad you bring up this notion of sovereignty, because it's definitely a term that is used a lot lately. And I'm a firm believer that there cannot be sovereignty unless we become aware and coherent of our own journey entering our lives. So we have the original blueprint. That's where we all started. That's the original essence from where we all originated. That is us, our quintessential nature. And then you have the imprint. So blueprint and imprint. The imprint is all the information that surrounded our incarnational journey, that informed our development, informed our beliefs about whether or not we're first and foremost welcome in our family, our community, and our world. And then whether or not we're safe, whether or not we belong. Wow, what an important thing. If you don't believe that you belong in the world, this is a big issue. And actually, our world is, we're all engaged. Well, we're not all engaged. Many of us, I believe, we're engaged in this process of rekindling our deep sense of belonging.
Yeah.
But we can welcome humans in the world in a way whereby they never forget, they never ever question whether or not they're loved, whether or not they're safe, whether or not they belong. Sovereignty can really flourish when we revisit and become aware and coherent with our own birth imprints. Why? Because our imprints inform our beliefs. So let me give you an example. Let's see. Imagine that your mama is pregnant, so you're in your mama's womb, and mama has lots going on in her life. You're communicating. You're way more conscious than we are now. That's something that we should all remember, is that babies are way more conscious than you and I are now, and more aware. So yeah, imagine that you're growing in your mama's womb and she has lots going on in her life, and as we all do, and she feels like, oh, I don't feel my baby. This is a very normal thing.
Yeah.
You know, until we see the first ultrasound, we don't even feel like pregnancy is real. This is a thing. Like, so you're communicating, you're never not communicating. You've made this extraordinary, heroic journey of entering form. I mean, our first life-death experience is burrowing into our mama's womb, our implantation, you know, deciding, am I going to stay here or not? So you've been through a massive journey. You're here. I'm here. I'm here. And mama is looking outwards. And then she's scheduling appointments, and rather than connecting in, wow, thank you so much for coming.
Yeah.
I feel you, you know, and communicating, then she maybe goes and schedules an ultrasound. So there's an environmental thing happening. She's going out, she's getting ultrasound, she's talking to other things, people, midwives, doctors, neighbors, friends, mama, whoever, to somehow give her a sense of her and your well-being rather than turning in. So there's an imprint that is, I can communicate and talk, but no one really listens. So this develops a belief in you that is, I can express myself and communicate, but I'm not heard. And so this is just one of a million examples, you know? And the imprint informs our beliefs. Our beliefs then inform our values. And then what do our values inform? All of our decisions. So who's making our decisions? Okay, we can work with beliefs, sure. That's a good start. It's really important. But we need to go back further to really discover what did my arrival teach me about relationships, about the world? And I feel that the most direct, effective, efficient form of birth education is the revisiting of your own birth, pre-birth, conception, and preconception experiences.
And how do you think people can do that? Is that a part of your work as a sacred birth keeper?
Yes, yeah. It's the cornerstone of my work. It's really the foundation, both in my preconception work with couples and prenatal work, as well as when I am training birth keepers, which I do. That's the foundation, is a very deep inner work of becoming aware of our own experience entering form. And inevitably, we're reliving our births every single day of our lives. We are a bit confused, I think, about what memory is. But memory, especially prenatal memory, it's, you know, easily described as the way that we are experiencing the world, experiencing our relationships. More specifically, the way we are interpreting our experiences. It's how we see the world. So our memories, our birth and pre-birth memories, are representing every single day of our lives. An amazing midwife and author of the book Sacred Birthing, Birthing a New Humanity says they're representing every day of our lives, especially when we go through times of change and transition. Inevitably, when a woman gives birth, she re-experiences her own birth. And therefore, that's why even the most conscious, well-prepared mamas often experience hospital transfers, medicalized, surgical, traumatic birth experiences. When we really listen to those stories, we see, it was a total representation. So the way to maximize birth outcomes, first and foremost, heal our own births. And yes, I guide that work.
It will be really interesting and a lot of people might know a little bit more about what do you do as a sacred birth keeper? What is the supportive role that you provide for families? I think that information would be valuable for the people who are hearing us.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, let me start by saying that all birth, no matter how and where and with whom it unfolds, is sacred. Every single birth is a sacred birth. And this is really about restoring that sacredness. And in that way, showing up with awareness and a capacity for real, true presence to mothers and babies and families. And I have extensive doula training and lots of other trainings. And I don't use these titles because, not because they're not important, but because, again, families need so much more. Typical doula trainings, not the ones that I have done. I was trained through the Sacred Birthing School on Kauai, Hawaii, which is an incredibly deep, rich lineage of preserving birth wisdom through the healing of our own birth and pre-birth experiences. So my elder is Barbara Essman. She's the co-founder and the director of the Sacred Birthing School. And we really recognize that pregnant mamas and families need much more than 3 prenatal visits and presence during the birth and 1 or 2 postpartum visits. Mamas need so much more than that. She needs a depth of presence. She just needs presence. Throughout her entire pregnancy, she needs a woman who is going to walk alongside of her and be deeply present as her entire history, her whole story, unfolds and gets told and retold, and that she's loved unconditionally through every single thing that inevitably comes up. And so that woman needs to be deeply coherent with her own stuff, with her own history. Otherwise, there's going to be huge limitations in terms of the degree to which she can love this pregnant goddess, birthing goddess. So a sacred birth keeper is a woman who shows up in another woman and family's life to love them unconditionally as they do the work inside of themselves to transform through this very sacred and transformative threshold, to listen to her, deeply listen to her. She doesn't need birth education. Men need birth education. They need birth prep classes. Women don't. Women know how to birth. Every single one of our 100 trillion cells are birthing every second. We don't need to learn. We just need to be supported and to be loved, even as we do what we know how to do best, which is give birth. We thrive in that mystery. We don't need anything but deep, deep presence. So as a sacred birth keeper, I give a lot of support, not only for her, but for her partner, for them as a couple. I really recognize that actually it's the love of the couple that ultimately is informing the baby's entire sense of whether or not they're loved, whether or not they belong. Their love is what created the baby.
Yeah.
Their love is everything. We can all agree that our parents' love and friendship was probably the single most important thing in our lives growing up. And that begins preconception. And so I honor that. I'm not at all trying to put a wedge into that, for sure. And certainly doing everything in my power to try not to sever, to put a wedge in between mother baby.
Yeah.
I'm there to honor that dyad, the mother baby dyad, to continuously encourage her and love her no matter what is coming up, and empower. I don't like this word empower, actually, but to admire her power, and her connection with her body, with her baby, with her beauty, with her creative power.
So what you're really saying is that the parental bonding is like one of the cornerstones of the baby's nervous system, basically, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The quality of our parents' love is everything. It's everything.
In your opinion, what does a sovereign birth looks like?
Yeah, beautiful question. Well, yeah, we touched on sovereignty, right? To restore our sovereignty, we need to become aware of our own birth imprints. So work with a practitioner who's deeply trained and skilled in that area. In this way, you become aware of your beliefs. Our beliefs are not what we think, right? We can think we believe all kinds of things. Our body holds our beliefs. This becomes very important in pregnancy and birth, because, everything is body oriented. Our beliefs inform our values and therefore all of our decisions. So I always say, to restore true sovereignty, especially in conception, pregnancy, birth, parenting, do the work to heal your own birth. And in this way, you can then navigate the whole journey by gathering the necessary information to then make fully informed decisions based on knowledge of all of the alternatives. So there's different models of care. You have the medical model of care. You have the midwifery model of care. You have the free birthing model of care. Sovereignty to me looks like having all the information you need about all of these models so that you have true freedom of choice and you can make fully informed decisions based on knowledge of all the alternatives every step of the way. That can look like you're planning a free birth at home with no birth attendants present, just you and your husband or your best friend and maybe your toddler and dog. And at some point you decide to go to the hospital and get a cervical check and go home and keep going. That's sovereignty, so being able to interchange. And so my role and my approach with all mothers and families is not to say you should birth like this, or it's safer to birth in the hospital, or free birth is the way. It's none of that. It's rather providing all the information they need to make fully informed decisions. And the other piece that I would add is that the baby is the number one expert in birth. We were all the number one experts in our lives from the time of preconception. And so to actually welcome the new human, who I believe is a sovereign human being, we need to respect their innate, inherent sovereignty. And that means, as stewards, if you will, of their consciousness as parents, we acknowledge that we don't know who they are and what they need, but we trust them, and we trust that they know exactly what they need. So the single most effective way to gather accurate information about the well-being of your baby is to talk to them directly. And so I facilitate that kind of thing. And I think it's really important, this piece of humility. I think it's very important how can I say that with my children that they need to be born like this? Perhaps they need to be born via cesarean, let's say, in order to successfully deliver their mission in the world. And so the process is to continuously attune to them, to continuously come into alignment with the highest possible birth scenario. And therefore, the sacred birth keeper is supporting that. But yeah, in order to cultivate sovereign human beings, it's a cultivation. We cannot teach it. We have to model it. And I think Satguru said this one time, that we're stepping out of this paradigm of parenting human children, and we're stepping into this the cultivation of human beings, and that means we need to model it. We cannot actually cultivate a human being with a high esteem who believes in themselves if we don't believe in them when they're being actually set up. Once they're born, it's too late. Like, our job, I believe, once our children are born, is to love them unconditionally. They're already set up. We've already built them and helped to organize, all the information that they took into their system.
Okay, so what if that doesn't happen? Sovereignty during this time, during preconception, during birth. What if you have a plan, but everything backfires and you end up having a traumatic birth experience? What can people do in those situations? Like, is this reversible? Is this workable?
Yeah, it's super important that we remember there's no such thing as perfect. Whatever that is, doesn't exist, right? It's impossible. And therefore, I like to think that we can now, terminate this, we can be done with the whole burden I think that mothers have been made to feel. That's a result of a very coercive, industrialized, fear-mongering model of birth. That whole thing that now, let me explain. We know that the baby is experiencing every one of the mother's thoughts and feelings. This has become quite it's been that piece of that factual information has become quite burdensome for parents, right? And it will for any one of us in moments feel, oh no, my baby is feeling everything I'm feeling, or what? But I like to say, look, this isn't about adding stress. It's about harnessing the opportunity that we have to be truthful with our babies as they come in. And so when and if there's stressful situations, if we have an awareness that everything they're experiencing is indeed imprinting them and they are indeed experiencing it, then we can talk truthfully to them and remind them, we're not scared because you're here, or we're not sad because you're here, or we're not doing this, we're not intervening in this way because we believe you're incapable of getting born. We know that you and only you know how to get born. We're doing this, for example, maybe your mama is taking this drug to help you be born safely. I have many examples actually of how this conscious communication it really creates miracles. I have been part of hospital births where the baby the mother and therefore the baby has gone through every possible intervention, has received every possible drug that's available to birthing women, which is basically all of them, weirdly, but right down to general anesthesia. And I've seen, and we've communicated with these babies every single step of the way, saying, look, this is what we're doing. This is what you might experience. This is what you might feel. your mama's body needs these drugs. Your body does not need these drugs. You do not need to take these drugs into your body. And we've seen these babies being born wide awake, fully alert, latching on the breast immediately, which is something that doctors never see. Mothers who are drugged give birth to babies that are overdosed, because those babies, those drugs are administered according to the mother's body weight. So again, this is not about perfection. The plan, let go of the plan. No plan is ever going to go as planned. It never.
Yeah.
There's going to be all kinds of things, unforeseen things that come up. That's why I believe birth preparation ought to be a cleaning of our psyches, a deconditioning, unlearning, so that we can come back into right relationship with life.
Mm-hmm.
This is why the healing of our own births is so important, because when we re-welcome ourselves into our bodies, into our lives, to our relationships, then we can partner with the mystery, and we can partner with life itself in a way that isn't trying to control, that is respecting life. And when these things are happening, we're just conscious that there's a baby in the room. There's another human being here that's taking in all of it. And just touching on the thing I said at the beginning, that the burden that we feel, that's not generated by us. That's not innate and inherent to us. That is what a hugely multi-billion-dollar industry has put on mothers. That is the result of what I call, and many birth keepers call, the dead baby card. If you don't do this, your baby will die. If you don't freeze your eggs, you'll have a less than 1% chance of conceiving. If you don't get this ultrasound, you have a 68.9% chance of your baby dying at birth. If you don't get this urine, this is not exaggeration. This is what women are experiencing every single day while they're pregnant. And so then when we start to talk about this more conscious, aware approach, sometimes that it becomes convoluted, where we go, oh, this is so burdensome. No, that needs to be cleansed out. That needs to be cleaned. And that's why the healing of our own births is so important. When we remember, then we can navigate with clarity and sovereignty.
Yeah, I think this subject also touches and triggers guilt, especially in mothers.
Yeah.
And maybe guilt is also part of that system that you were talking about. But I feel like when we're talking about this awareness and conscious, a lot of us mothers, I didn't do this, and feel guilty, and maybe that also needs to be integrated, and we also need to learn and deal a little bit with this guilt, because it's part of the process, right?
Integration is a great word. And I also want to say, in respect to sovereignty, it's important for us to remember that these souls are sovereign beings, and they also chose this. They chose these parents, this lifetime, this point of time on the planetary history to incarnate. They're not ours. And it is never too late to heal. There's an amazing book written by Mia Califf, and it's called It's Never Too Late, Healing Birth and Pre-Birth Imprints at Any Age. I believe that it's an important piece of work for all of us to engage with continuously. The way that we're born informs the way that we live, informs the way that we die. This is a quote by Sunny Carl, midwife, and therefore this is bigger than this lifetime. It's bigger than parenting. We're looking at the whole incarnational process. I hit my head when I was born. This was something that I became acutely aware of in a dream that I had while being in an apprenticeship with my elder in 2020. And, the way, and then I really became aware of how, when I'm leaving my body, it might be really important to have someone actually supporting my head, holding my head. And in this way, at that time, that can come full circle. Yeah. There's deeper psycho-spiritual realms to all of that, around being supported, around being held. But the point is that the way we're born also will inform the way we leave this body when we reach the birth portal yet again on the other side of this amazing life we're living. And yeah, you see this, many people are born drugged and hooked up to machines, and a lot of people die drugged and hooked up to machines. And we have more than enough awareness and knowledge and capacity for healing, that we can change that. I think we can be born awake and aware, and we can also leave this lifetime awake and aware. And these are ideals, yes. And no matter what the circumstances, we bring the same level of awareness and consciousness to it, even and especially when drugs are being used at birth or death. Those in surroundings, we're the sacred birth keepers. We're upholding the sacred, the awareness, the love. And so I like to say, these are ideals, but this is the vision that Luminous Birth is upholding. Yeah. And I want to say one other thing, that yes, it's important to integrate traumatic births. Very important. Equally, there's no more important, but I'll push into that, might be integrating an ecstatic, pain-free, blissful birth. Because the actual physiologic blueprint, the way we're designed, in fact, is birth is designed to be ecstatic. A birthing mother produces way higher amounts of oxytocin than during orgasm. That's the design. That's not to say every woman is going to experience total euphoria and orgasm whilst she births, but when we know that that's the design, we prepare a lot differently. We make a setting for birth that would be the same as the setting we would make for making love. I always say, give birth where you would make love. These are the birth requires the same environment and conditions. And we like to talk about trauma in our time. We're very fascinated with it. It's important. But so is the conversation about our greatness. And when you blast through all of that stuff that we've been conditioned with, then you transcend all of those shadows. I mean, birth is transcendent. Yeah. Everything comes up. Why? So we can transcend that and welcome the new. So, I will say that in my experience of supporting mamas, it's also quite something to integrate these ecstatic experiences for her to emerge fully into her fullness, her power, her greatness, who she is as mother.
Yeah, you spoke a little about this relationship between birth and sexuality. That was something I heard in one of your videos on your Instagram, and I never really thought about that. You were saying that your birth is your first sexual experience. Could you explain that a little bit?
Well, I'll correct myself now.
Okay.
Our conception is our first sexual experience.
How so?
Everything that was present, all of the energies that were present while we were being conceived, forms the base of who we are. Okay. It's a challenging memory for most people to access because we have a lot of judgment toward our parents and discomfort imagining our parents having sex. Yeah. But seems that that's how most of us got here. That's changing now. You don't need humans to make babies anymore. but we won't go through that rabbit hole. Yeah, that forms the base of who we are. When you unlock that memory, you will go, "Ugh, that's who I am." I was guided by my elder, my teacher, many times before I finally accessed that memory. And I remember my experience re-experiencing my parents' lovemaking, and I went speechless. I'm getting heat in my body now as I speak about it. It was passionate, it was heated, and that's who I am. I'm passionate, and that it felt very quick as well. And in many conversations I've had with my mother about my conception, she said, yeah, it was. And she said, you know, we already had a 2-year-old. My sister was already there. She said, we had a toddler. So this wasn't many hours of lovemaking extending over the whole evening. This was, you know, we were really in love, but we never really had the chance to make love because of life and parenting. So yeah, that's who I am. That's who I am. So I won't go into that too much, but the other piece that I will say is, because this brings us in also into the physiologic blueprint of birth, the alchemy of conception, of pregnancy, of birth, the heart. And I yes, birth is the most sexual experience. It's the most taboo conversation we could have, sex and birth. I think that we've successfully extracted the two is why birth is successfully medicalized. And yeah, there's movements like ecstatic birth, orgasmic birth, and all of these things. And I just really like to bring it back home to the heart, to love. You don't hear this word very much in birth, which is the strangest thing when we say that out loud. In fertility, in conception, in pregnancy, in birth, we're not using the word love. So the journey of conception through birth, postpartum, this whole journey, spiritually, psychologically, and biochemically, is designed to escort us back home to our hearts. Most people are not prepared for that journey, and they're being prepared for everything but, and this is why birth so often becomes medicalized and traumatic. But going back to conception, and the energies that are present, and how this, we could say, is our first sexual experience. Sexuality, the word doesn't really get to what we're actually talking about.
Yeah, there's more to it.
Yeah. I prefer the word fertility. It's sexuality, fertility. This is not an aspect of us. This is who we are. This is our life force, creative energy. This is our capacity. Before we came on here, you said, please take all your space here.
Yeah.
That was such a powerful comment that you said. And our capacity to take up space in the world is informed by our mama's capacity to take up space. And so her capacity to receive, the dynamics between our parents. Yeah. If our parents have a maximum capacity to receive and to give, and this is a really harmonious exchange, then the more of our soul consciousness, the more of our life force energy can incarnate, can enter form. It's a little bit abstract. That's going into some deeper inquiries that I've made over the years. Yeah, our parents' lovemaking is very important. It's the foundation of who we are. It's a very integral part of all of our history. It's not nothing. Yeah.
In your experience, do you see a correlation not only between this first sexual experience that we had during conception or during birth, in our creative life force, as you said, but also in the way that we relate to one another, or maybe even in the way that we relate to our sexuality itself.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is it's a deep topic, and I want to really bring a lot of tenderness to it. Yeah, I mean, our relationships with ourselves, with others, and with the world, with Mother Earth. Hopefully, yeah, I can tell by what you guys are creating that that's what it's really all about. Is our relationship, our interconnectedness with Mother Earth, and our relationship to all of life is informed by our very first relationship, which was our mothers. And there's a bit of nuance to that. If you were a twin, your first bonding experience might have been with your twin. But yeah, the mother is important. And yeah, a mother, this is why the preconception work is so important, because when a woman conceives, we all know when we're making love, we're re-experiencing everything. All of the experiences we've ever had that have empowered us, every experience we've had that has disempowered us, this is arising. Whether we're tending to it and being present for it or not is a different story. But that continues through pregnancy and through birth. Again, all the stories that her body is holding are going to get exposed. She has to open one way or another. Opening has to happen to give birth. Expansion, opening. So, yeah, our relationship to our mother's relationship to her body, and our father's relationship to our mother's body, and our mother's experiences sexually and otherwise, wanted or unwanted, all of it. Her, and more than that, her coherence with it informs her capacity to be fully present for us. So the mother's capacity to be fully present for the developing infant, child, toddler, adolescent, for then, for us to cultivate human beings who are fully realized in our fertile nature, fertile power, our sexuality. We need parents that have healed the wounds of sexuality prior, and that comprises conscious conception. And in my preconception program, we go into this at depth.
Yeah. What if this healing doesn't happen during this preconception time?
Yeah, it's okay. It's this is a new conversation, kind of also ahead of its time. Here's the thing, is actually birth itself has full potential and the highest potential to heal completely any and all of the trauma that preceded it, which is why it is so, so important that we do everything we can to protect the birth. Because birth is either going to heal past traumas or perpetuate past traumas. And if you are just working with a midwife or an OBGYN, if you have an OBGYN, your prenatal visits, a really long prenatal visit would be 15 minutes. If you have a midwife, a really long prenatal visit would be an hour. And you have a few of those. This is not enough time to learn a woman's history and to become really aware of the stories that her body is holding. That's why doulas are so important. That's why birth keepers are so important. If I'm walking alongside of you from your preconception time, I get to know your history. I get to know what you've been through. I get to know maybe what your grandma went through. and I get to know how you were born and what your past relationship was like, and all the things, so that not if, but when those things come up in birth, probably silently, I'll be able to recognize it. We need someone in the room who can recognize our story as it's emerging, and then respond or focus awareness in a way that promotes the healing in that moment. This is the opportunity. Yeah, doctors don't have this awareness. Surely most haven't healed their own birth and their own history. It's problematic. It's very damaging. And yeah, something as simple as putting an IV in a woman's arm before she's completely ready could perpetuate a whole traumatic history. Doing a cervical check, I have seen through experience, loving women through births, that cervical checks can perpetuate a whole lifetime of sexual trauma. They are often more painful than the birth itself. So yeah, if you have a doula or a birth keeper by your side, they can help to support you, truly support you. You know, yeah.
Do you see preconception, gestation, birth as having a role on planetary healing?
Yeah, the single most important, impactful thing we could do if we're even remotely interested in planetary healing is protecting birth. But more than that, it's remembering our origins, the mother. It really makes me emotional to even go there, you know, because we have silenced the mother so deeply. We don't even use the word. When I developed Luminescence fertility and preconception program, I was confronted by several pioneers in pre and perinatal psychology, who were politically concerned about my language use around the word mother and father and couple. And I showed up to those meetings and I listened to their concerns, but I am so absolutely crystal clear that we will never stop using the word mother or father or couple or love. In no other culture would you see that a mother and a baby would ever be separated, not near, not anywhere around birth, especially if the baby was not thriving. We have no understanding of that principle in our culture. If you know that our wound of separation is cultural, it's not part of the human condition. You go into another culture where they are still living in harmony with the earth, and you see, it's not just possible, it's our design to grow, never questioning whether or not this blades of grass are our relation, and this plant is our relation, and the birds are our relations. And if we want to disconnect humanity from themselves and Gaia, then the most effective way to do that is to target the birth. If we want to restore planetary health, it starts preconception, definitely birth, definitely at any age become aware of your own birth. I think this is what really restores our innate interconnectedness. If we feel separate from the earth, we will continue ravaging her and hurting her. But you don't do these things to your brothers and sisters, you know, to your mother. Yeah, I think if we are in any way concerned about the well-being of the planet, we'll start there. And, you know, the reason why it kind of makes me emotional is because I see this on every level. You know, in my generation, in our generation, there's this conscious movement, you know, and I err with caution with this term conscious conception, because the consciousness is in fact, in some way, just bringing people way more into their heads and their intellect and disconnecting us from our hearts further. I've been to several big, beautiful gatherings this year that were apparently all in service to the new earth and this new human and regenerative future. And it's embarrassing to say that I didn't hundreds of people gathering, world-renowned people showing up for these things, and I don't hear the word mother once. You know, so we have to be careful. We all came from the mother. We all came from a woman. We all came from a womb. And we're walking by pregnant mothers and women and children and parents and fathers, and we're forgetting that they are the heroes, you know. And I think the only way to restore health of our world, of our economies, our societies on every possible level, it starts by centering the family, and more than that, centering the mother baby. Yeah,
That's such a beautiful message. Another thing, you do not only support women in this journey, but you also support men as well. And I think that's very interesting, because when we talk about birth, gestation, conception, we mainly focus on the woman and the baby. And I wanted to ask you, how do you see the role of the masculine during this time, and how can we support men to take up more space and to do their bidding, you know, because they have a role to play here, a very important role, right? And when we give space for men, what actually can happen in terms of healing the masculine? Because you touch on that, and that is beautiful, and I want to bring that up. There's not a lot of people talking about this.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah. Besides healing our own births, including the baby as a conscious participant in their lives from the time of preconception, supporting the relationship, the couple. Besides those three things, the fourth dimension of awareness that we bring in Luminous Birth to families is the inclusivity of the father. And I think the easiest way for us to touch on that is just for all of us to take a second right now and close our eyes and really let in the feelings of having a truly present father. Yeah, and the feelings of having a deeply supported mother. Letting in the feelings of perhaps seeing our mom and dad being friends and being on the same page. We all needed a mother, and we all needed a father. And just as the mother and the children need that presence, I think what often doesn't get spoken about is that he needs that too. It's his purpose. It is becoming a father is the single most transformational milestone of a man's life. He changes too on a biochemical level. His hormones completely change. He becomes a man. And we are living in a largely fatherless world. You know, it's one of the main reasons for all the war and the chaos going on our planet, we've built a lot of soldiers, not a lot of fathers. And so the predicament that we're in right now, and what I see, and I always say, men need to be supported by other men who are walking the path. So I fill a void. I show up and give fathers the support they need and innately deserve. I also bridge connection between our community and parents with other incredible male fathers, teachers. But the problem is that in today's world, it's for us women, we can look and we can find women. The elders are there if we look deep enough. The elders are so important. They're so important. And eventually we can find an elder woman who can love us through these thresholds. It's a bit harder for men. Yeah. So men, what I'm observing is when they're becoming fathers, they're not only the initiate in this initiatory rite of passage, they're also having to be the elder. They're not receiving the support. They're not seeing the examples around. And therefore, they're full of what ifs. And I'm not ready. And, there's a real stunt in development in this way. There's very little encouragement toward fatherhood. But if we look at the physiologic needs, the female physiology, her partner has the biggest influence on her physiology. I love giving birth education to men because they actually really get it. When they get real education, they realize, oh, I am actually the one who knows how to make her feel safe. Yeah. Safety in birth is not anything to do really with medical history and forms. It is everything to do with a feeling. The safety in birth is the same as the safety in lovemaking. And he is the most powerful person in that. To make her feel safe, he knows how to do that. But she doesn't need, in the old birth education classes, it became, once fathers got taken out of the birth room in the 1800s, when doctors came in with all their fancy tools and metal objects, and then when men were brought back in, they were brought in through like LeMay's childbirth education and the Bradley method, which basically made the men birth coaches. So they'd be coaching their wives to give birth, and it's like, they don't need coaches. They need presence. They need the birthing goddess needs to be protected and loved through presence and trust and love. That's it. And so his capacity for true presence also relies on him healing his own birth and healing his own history, so that, when he hears her singing her gorgeous birthing song, he's not scared. And he knows that that's the sound of his child coming into the world. She's not dying. There's nothing to fix. There's nothing to do. And so when all of this is supported from preconception, then birth becomes what it was always meant to be, which is a celebration of love. The hormones, the beta endorphins, the oxytocin, all of that is this beautiful neurochemical elixir that the baby is bathed in, that informs them of love and safety and connection. So imagine a world where all babies are born in that hormonal elixir, brought in on this wave of hormones of love and safety and connection. Doesn't mean there's not fear. Doesn't mean there's not any of that. But when I have parents rewrite their birth stories, imagine, you having the birth you wish you had had. Yeah, every single one of the many hundreds of people that I've guided that journey for, everyone says, I had two loving parents present, two parents that were in love. evidently we all needed it.
Not too perfect parents, too
Not
loving.
too perfect
Yeah.
parents, exactly. And sometimes, you know, it's not possible, but this is where the communication comes in. This is where, you know, with any avenue of conception and birth, no matter what, we can bring love and consciousness to it. When we remember what we needed, we can bring forward that consciousness to our children's experiences when and if we're not able to deliver, because we won't always be able to. We can affirm who they truly are, affirm the imprints that they need, rather than it being a negative imprint.
Yeah. And also because things are not always going to turn out the way we want them to. And I really do see the rebuilding as the main foundation for something like really strong, because then you know when something doesn't go the way that you planned or you want, that there's healing, and you know how to heal, and you know how to do that, and that's super empowering. And as you said, as role models to our children, it's also super empowering for them to see that we are able to do that rebuilding, you know, that it's okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like, we shouldn't be preparing our children to enter a perfect world. Like, whatever that is, it doesn't exist. It would be a huge disservice. We want to equip human beings to be confident, to be highly esteemed, to be resilient, to face life's challenges with confidence and love. And yeah, it's so scary. I feel like, you know, I just bow at the feet of all parents, because, yeah, it is scary, and that's why we need to restore family culture, because I always say I'm all talk. You know, when I'm going through these thresholds myself, I will need support.
Yeah.
And especially because I know so much, or think I do.
Yeah.
You know, it's every single person needs this support. And it's not if the doubt comes up, it's not if the fear comes up, it's when it does, who's there,
Exactly.
right? And we need the encouragement. As a culture, we've become really anti-life, and we, instead of saying, yes, go for it, do it, you're going to be so happy when you have your table full of grandchildren. You know, like, instead of that, there's a whole bunch of what ifs, and there's a whole bunch of, yeah, you know, just wait until, you know. So yeah, we need to bring it all back and encourage.
Sorry, that's such a beautiful message that you brought and shared, all of your wisdom, your experience, and your love also very deeply felt in your words, I think. And thank you so much for your presence and for being here with us and sharing your light with us. Before we close this episode, people might want to hear where they can contact you or find you on Instagram or something like that.
Yeah, very straightforward. We have a website, www.luminousbirth.earth, and on Instagram @Luminous Birth. So very easy to find.
Thank you so much.
Thank
it was a
you.
pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much for joining us in this episode of Full Incarnations. For more information and to register, please visit our website. Until next time, may you walk gently with your beginnings and fully into your incarnation.